if you talk to anybody who's creative and has made a career out of being creative, their pathway almost always meanders and goes in
Mm.
like directions that they never expected. And so I think you really have to be open to that if you're going to go into a creative field and experiment and try things on and see how it fits. And like Ilana and I never guessed that we would be in the position that we're in now.
I am so excited to be here today because I have got two fabulous women with me to interview. Katie and Ilana are talented hand lettering artists who started collaborating when they realized that they were both independently creating a course on art licensing, and they decided to make it twice as nice. So since then, they've built a creative education platform together and have been growing the brand Goodtype with their transparent looks at what creative business can be. Welcome, Katie and Ilana.
What a great
Hey,
intro.
that
Thank
was
you.
lovely.
So to start, can you guys, I've done a double interview before, just once, but we'll just kind of individually, can you guys give us a really brief overview of how you came into lettering and art for products before you guys met?
Yeah. Katie,
Mhm.
you go first.
Great. Yeah. And we're usually good at figuring it out on our own, who's going to talk. So don't worry about about like pointing to us or anything. We'll figure it out.
You guys are good.
Okay, so my I was planning on being a musician. Both of my parents are professionally trained musicians, and I, you know, got into it from like the age of when I could speak, basically. And I made a last minute change right before going into college because I had this course in my senior year that was like photojournalism. And one of the assignments was to create an album cover, and I ended up creating the entire album insert without being asked. And I would come in like every day after class to work on it. And I remember asking the teacher, like, what is this here that I'm doing? He was like, that would be graphic design. And so I went, actually, I knew what school I wanted to go to. I went to the University of North Texas, but I went to the like what's it called, the day where you go and you like feel it out and they
Career
kind of show
Orientation.
day.
you around. Yeah, where like before orientation, before I'd even officially
Oh,
been taken it, you could like go and test things out. So I tested both music and and graphic design program, but I was just really drawn to graphic design even though I was like totally new to it and didn't know what the heck I was doing. It just like felt like my own path. I guess my parents had done the musician thing, and so I was like, oh, I'll pave my own way. And this also seems like maybe it might be slightly more financially stable. I'm sure I could have made it work um financially music wise, but
Yeah, but I hear you.
yeah. So that's how I got into that. Then I graduated with a degree in communication design, went to work as a art director at a small advertising agency here in Austin, Texas. And then, it was a great opportunity. I got to put my hands in so many different projects because we were relatively small. So that was great, but I just had this feeling in my gut like something is off. And so I did decide to go out on my own and start my own like stationery and art print business and did some freelance on the side. And yeah, that's kind of how I got into this world.
That's
And I fell
awesome.
into art licensing. And then that's how I met Ilana. Like you said, we were both, creating a course around art licensing, and that was our origin story there.
That's awesome. So now that Ilana is back, Ilana, can you tell us what how you came into lettering and art for products before you guys started collaborating?
yeah, absolutely. So Katie and I have crazy similar stories because I very vividly remember doing the exact same project of doing like I think every graphic design or everyone who took some sort of design class in high school did like an album cover, or maybe we're dating ourselves. I don't know, but I did that. I thought it was so much fun. And then I knew I would go to school for art, but I didn't have to like declare a major. And I ended up transferring schools, and I, like Katie, toured two different departments, graphic design and interior design, because I loved trading spaces with my whole heart and soul. Like that show on TLC, that was like
Fair.
the
Yeah.
most cringe. And I painted my room 100 times. I thought I would go into interior design. And when I saw the graphic design department, I just like felt so at home. And when I took that first class, I was like, this is it for me. This is exactly where I'm supposed to be. And so after that, I kind of did the traditional trajectory, worked at an agency, took a job as like an art director after trying to find a job forever, and just really wanted to like, I wasn't fulfilled. And so my first licensing experience was when I reached out to a client about freelance, and they sent me back a licensing agreement, and I had absolutely no idea what I was signing up for. And I'm so glad I said yes anyway, but very similar to Katie's story.
I love that. So when I first discovered Ilana, like, which I think was probably in like 2020, you'd already written a book called Mind Your Business about creative business. And you guys were like potentially had just released your course, or you were getting ready to release it. So already you have, it seems like you guys have always had education built into your process, or maybe not always, but for a big part of your creative careers. So the question is, how do you balance the multiple focuses, multiple streams, the going from graphic to design to lettering to licensing to then education, all those incomes back as an independent artist? And also, has that changed as you guys have only expanded your empire?
That's a really good question, and Katie's going to have a really thoughtful answer. But let me just back up for 1 second.
Oh, the pressure's on.
No, no pressure. It's just who you are. I know you'll have a great response. But Elizabeth, you were one of the first artists I found that was doing licensing. And so Katie and I started working together in 2017 or 18. And released our first course then. But before that, for a couple of years, I had been following your newsletter.
That's so funny. And I had that trend.
Was it later?
At that time, I always did
2018 was our first.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's what I followed. I was like, oh, this person knows what they're doing. So I had been following you like from the beginning of my licensing journey, which is just such a full circle moment.
That's
and then
so
Katie
funny.
says I have my timing wrong.
Well, because
I might too. Now that I think about it, everything's a bit of a blur. I'm not one of those,
I mean, what is
those
time?
people that's
and also like 2020. Yeah, 2020 to 2022 is just like
that was just like a cyclone of like a succubus of nobody knows what time it was or where they were or what was happening.
I totally get that.
True.
But either way, like, yeah, it's so funny because when I found you, Ilana, like basically saw you online and like started reading and saw, I was like, how did I not know this person already? Like, what the heck? I should have known her. So
I was just lurching on the sidelines. I was like a longtime listener, first time caller, I guess. But you asked about balancing, and one of the things that I've said, especially as a working parent, or just like a parent in general, because this is hard for everyone, is like, I sort of gave up on balancing and try and go for more like harmony, because the truth is if one is up, one is down. And so there's like never a balance. It's never like 50% work, 50% play. And it's something that's like always in flux. And so Katie and I have had really busy seasons. And I think we sort of have the approach of like, this needs to be, Katie's really good at this, is like, this needs to be our priority right now. And then my brain will be like, but there's 800 other things. And it's really helpful to talk to her and figure out, okay, well, here, like, let's map them out. And like over the next 90 days, which one should be the most important? Yeah, I don't know. Katie, you probably have more to add to that.
Well, I just want to be super transparent that we haven't been great at balancing, and it's like hard when you get into education, especially because to create the educational content and the support and to go in as deep as you want to, it takes a lot of time and preparation, and that's time that you don't get back, and so you have to take it away from something. So we have gotten to this season in our business where we are very infrequently creating art for ourselves anymore. And I've actually recently come to this kind of place of burnout because of that. And I just really have missed the creating for myself and creating for, you know, my clients. And so Ilana and I talked pretty recently about sort of doing a restructure for our business so that we can get some of that back and hopefully do the education at the same time. So our plan going into the next year is to kind of recenter our business around us creating as artists, some collaborations, some independently, and then let the education piece be more of documenting the process of it. And so instead of like kind of talking in theory and you know, explaining like this is what we would do in this situation, we'll just like vlog style, this is what we did today in our businesses, this is why we did it this way, and this was the outcome. And so hopefully the hope of what we'll get out of it is more of that fulfillment of actually creating our own stuff without neglecting, you know, what the audience from Goodtype expects and needs from us as well.
Yeah, I love that. I
Yeah.
hear you, because it's really hard to balance. And I've found myself, it
Totally.
gobbles it all up, right? Like the education portion. And for me, it's
Yeah.
not so much the creating of new courses, though that does take time, but even just like, you know, I do YouTube, and like the interviews don't necessarily take too much, but like any of the like instructional kind of like, you know, YouTube, it just takes so much. And that's all in service of providing education for free, but also obviously promoting my own courses and things like that. So it all is part of the education arm of my business, and it definitely
Right.
takes away from the creative side.
I
Yeah,
feel
I
like
think it's, oh,
God.
I was just gonna say, I think it's definitely seasons in my head of, you know, you go into a season of this is my, or era, to speak in the language of the youths. This is my education era. Oh,
Yeah, yeah.
my puppy's getting mad about it. Let you pick it up from there, Ilana.
Okay. Yeah. We definitely like I was saying earlier, like we focus on one thing and then we focus on something else. And so I think we just sat in an era for too long. And part of that is like when an opportunity comes up, you want to say yes. And then you don't know how much is too much until it's like all on your plate and your pants are unbuttoned and you're like, oh my God, my stomach hurts. But I think also the climate has changed. And so in let's say 18 or 19, when we released our first licensing course, like no one, I mean, I know you had done stuff on it and there were some other people, but in the lettering world, we couldn't find anything that was about letterers, and specifically like spot graphics, and greeting cards is where we started. And so the climate has changed, which is awesome. More people are talking about it, more people are tapping into it, but also there is more access to online education. There's more, you know, there's more YouTube videos. There's way more that you can learn. We've spent so much more time even now, which is crazy because we were spending a lot of time back then on our phones. Like there's always a free summit that you can attend. And so I think even just the climate of how we consume information is different. And so we're always going to be like pivoting and changing and like tweaking things. But yeah, we really want to come from a place of like, okay, so we taught what we learned and we ended up like tipping the scale too much. And so now we want to even it back out. And so this next era for us is really going to be about, okay, well, before we told you how we do our outreach, but now we're actually going to show you with the stats and do it alongside you. And it just feels like bringing that humanity back. Like we don't want to lose who we are in our brand or in our business. And so being able to say like transparently what we're going through, I think it's going to be just a new adventure, and it should be really fun.
Yeah, I love that concept. And that's kind of touches on something else that I was gonna ask you later, but I can just bring up now, is like, I think anyone who has been doing an education part of their business is like constantly fighting the fight of that old adage of those who can't teach. And it's like, that's like such a mindset thing that I had to get over, like when I first started teaching, of like, is this me? If I'm going to teach this big course about like, the business of having a creative business and a surface design business? Does this mean like I'm doing this because I don't have a successful enough surface pattern business or whatever, or is this, and I think that's just that like adage is what has like gotten into so many teachers' heads, I think. And then
Yeah.
also the kind of, I feel like for on the other side of it, students who are consuming our content, I just hear so much these days, like no one makes any money in art except for teachers who are selling these $1 million courses or whatever. And it's like, that's also not necessarily true. Like,
Right.
obviously there are, some exceptions, but that's not really true either. So it's like that negativity comes into our like work. And while of course there's so many students who are grateful for what we do to share our knowledge and, not be gatekeeping, and you guys especially, and I know I do this as well, is like try to be as transparent as possible, as real as like what's happening. So that's super important and people are grateful for it, but also there is some thoughts of like, oh, who are these people who are teaching it who aren't really doing it? So I understand why
Yeah.
we want to like get back to our roots and prove that we can not just prove to other people, but prove to ourselves, but also enjoy the creative process of what we started, our careers doing.
Yeah. I think a lot of that comes down to fulfillment. Like we ended up just tipping the scale so far that that cup of like creating for the sake of creating just was empty. And so we just want to refill that cup. And, we have some students in our class that are, so, like mind-blowingly talented. And you're like, wait, they're so much better than me. And honestly, like that's a really good thing. Like
Mm-hmm.
that is a measure of doing something right, and that you're finding the people who, if that's the right person for your class or whatever, like that's a really great sign. But it of course is really easy to fall down the comparison trap and say, how those people are better than me, am I worthy of this? But at the same time, teaching is just another skill, and not everyone has that skill.
True.
And yeah, there's room for everyone to create in this space. And yeah, I think that comparison trap can come up really easily, and navigating that is definitely part of, I think, being or being a human maybe, but being a creative is definitely something we have to deal with.
Something that I would expect from a teacher is that they do have experience in the thing that they're teaching, and they have actually like gone through some of the struggles that I'm going to face and have had real metrics and experience basically. But what I don't expect from a teacher is that they're doing two full careers extremely well at the same time and like managing both, because that's just not possible.
Mm-hmm.
as a as a person who's tried to do
Yes.
to do it, I know how impossible that actually is. So I think it might actually be a green flag for me now to see a teacher that's just really, really focused on creating excellent educational content.
That's
And,
such a good point.
I think like, oh, wow, they're putting so much effort into this. They're not half-assing this. They're like fully invested in helping me and in laying this out in a way that I can understand. So I definitely have a lot more empathy for teachers, for professors, for anybody who's in that circumstance. And then I think also if you're waiting to be the best at something before you allow yourself to teach it, that day is never going to come. And
Oh
if you
yeah, for
have a
sure.
real desire, or you feel like you have a knack for teaching, or you want to just help people, I think go ahead and take that leap and just kind of see where it leads you. And then it's all about that balancing act of like, oh, I tipped a little too far into this, I'm not feeling as fulfilled, okay, I'm gonna readjust. And you have to try different measurements and see, what thing's gonna stick. We had
Yeah.
Lauren Hom on our podcast recently, and she's been to culinary school
Nice.
amongst her other like lettering talents, but she talks about like the 4 burners on your oven
Yeah.
and or your stovetop or whatever it is, and how one of your burners is like that main pot that you're really having to babysit and nurture, and it like needs a lot of stirring. And then maybe the back right pot is something that like you've got going on, but it's just simmering in the background and doesn't need much. And every once in a while you'll check on it. So I think that was a really good analogy for me to kind
I
of
love
wrap my
that.
mind around.
I love how you said that. And I just want to add to what Katie's saying is like, some people find that teaching is creative. Any sort of business, creative business, it requires creativity. And some people find that getting creative in that way fills their creativity cup enough. And
Mhm.
what Katie and I found was that we missed drawing and we missed creating art. And
Yeah.
so that's, you know, that's where we want to get back to, is mixing that back in. But it's very possible that someone can go on to teach and then say, I feel very creative in my job. I have to think about marketing in a creative way. I have to think about how I'm going to teach in a creative way. I have to think about all these ways I have to be creative, but I can always go back to my drawing.
Right.
And so, yeah, I just think you're flexing different muscles.
Yeah.
And some people like flexing in the sense of like creating reels, like content creation is getting creative in its own way. And
For
so
sure.
some people really like that way of getting creative. And some people are like, absolutely not. I would never do that. And so, you know, it just depends on like what's in those pots that Katie was talking about.
Yeah.
It,
And yeah,
I
I
love
love
it
the idea
really,
of someone just being so good at that one thing that they're not half-assing two things.
yeah. No, if you talk to anybody who's creative and has made a career out of being creative, their pathway almost always meanders and goes in
Mm,
like directions that they never expected. And so I think you really have to be open to that if you're going to go into a creative field and experiment and try things on and see how it fits. And like Ilana and I never guessed that we would be in the position that we're in now. But you know, it's brought it's opened our minds and new things have happened. So I think
Yeah.
like, you know, embrace the era that you're in and check in with yourself and then be open to like moving through just life and seeing what leads to what next, and then you just keep checking back in with yourself and making adjustments where you need to.
I love that. Well, so you guys had already built a collaboration a company together, collaborating called Lumiere for your courses. And then a few years back, you guys had the opportunity to buy out an established brand, Goodtype. This to me as a solo business owner is some boss moves. Like I can't even tell you, like buying out another business just sounds so boss. Can you
Yeah, it
tell
was
us?
intimidating.
Yeah, very intimidating. Can you tell me a little bit about what that's been like for you? I mean, you've been obviously we've been alluding to how the last year or two has been going, but stepping into someone else's audience and making it your own with like the knowledge that you guys bring to the table, and you know, obviously what works for you two as people, creatives, owners, etc.
yeah, I think the first thing was that when we decided to bring the two businesses together, there was a lot of conversation about like, what does a future vision for these brands look like? Because we wanted to make sure that they had the same path. And the reason I think it worked is because we sat down with the founder of Goodtype, Bodhi, and she basically said, what you're doing and what you are, the path that you're on is what I envision for this brand, but I don't want to be the one to execute it because I want to go pursue my own fine art. And so making sure that our like vision was aligned was first.
Mm,
And a lot of it has been throwing spaghetti on the wall and figuring out what works. And I think that's true for any business owner because like every week the algorithm changes and every week the a
yes,
new tool gets announced that you should be integrating into, you know, like business changes.
right.
And I think that conversation of like setting up, making sure that the businesses were aligned and that the audience overlapped was really, really important. Um, yeah, I mean, I feel like it just felt so natural. Like when she asked us, we were like, is this a joke? Like,
Mm,
obviously, yes, like there are no questions. And so I think that made for a really good foundation to build off of.
yeah.
Yeah, and the thing, you know, about Goodtype is previously it was not very monetized. Like there were a couple of workshops here or there that were very rare, but so we came and took it over, and we have to monetize it because this is our full-time job, and we have to make a living at the same time as providing support and education like we wanted to. So figuring out how to introduce that in a way where we were building trust with the audience, and we didn't come in like two salesmen with like our little, I don't know, I'm picturing them with like a little cane or something, and we're
I'm
like
having,
doing a dance, like holding out our hats, like pay us.
The Peanuts character.
Yeah, maybe we didn't want to come off like the Peanuts character and then like hold our hats out for money and just come off like sleazy or anything like that. But I don't think that's who we are, and but we had to
I
be
don't
very
even own a
intentional.
tuxedo.
No, so
Or a
we were
plaid
unprepared
blazer.
for that. We were unprepared for that in many ways, but we just had to be careful about how we came in and just laying the foundations for that trust. And a lot of that was providing a lot of free, helpful content in the beginning, and still, I mean, that's really important for us to do now. And then also, we had a lot of conversations around the audience that was existing and how we really wanted to focus on the metrics of engagement much more than growth. Like we were not interested in growing our numbers on Instagram very much. Like way more important was tapping into that existing audience and making sure that they were engaging with the community that they were in, and that they understood like all the resources and things that we offer. And I think we're still in that phase. We're still not in a real growth phase, because there are so many people in that audience that we're like, wow, like probably, I don't know how many of them don't see our content all the time, but a lot, so we still have a lot to do with re-engaging that audience. And that's definitely what's most important to us right now.
And I think just like we were saying before, is like you can't half-ass two things or more, but we inevitably, when you start a business, you end up trying a lot of things or having, for financial reasons, to wear a lot of hats. And so we're not good at all of them. And we've slowly grown and hired contractors and delegated certain things, but we can't delegate all of it. And we really want to be, we don't intend to like grow a team of 20. We really like keeping a lean business. And so that means that we are figuring out a lot of it as we go. And naturally that means pivoting and changing and not nailing it every time. And again, I think that's like part of the culture that we're into. Yeah. And so we're not good at it all. And we're trying a lot of things that, and by that, I mean like, okay, we tried this type of reel and did it work? No. Okay. Well, did we tap into this section of our audience? Have we reached everyone? Does everyone know about this yet? And so, just like anyone else, just like any business of any size, yeah, we're just trying.
Well, that's such an important point, because that's the thing. I think a lot of people come into, at least from, I mean, your audience obviously is different than mine, but a lot of people find me and they have just learned about surface design, and their idea of what surface design is creating a repeating pattern, and like for fabric, basically, like that's like as much as they know about what surface design is. So they're like, okay, cool. I have, this fine art that I've done, or I have always been artistic and I have some sketchbooks, and now I'm going to learn Adobe Illustrator. I'm going to put it all in repeat. I'm going to get it on fabric. I'm going to license my art, and bada bing, bada boom, I've got a business. Like, it's going to be awesome.
I wish it was like that. I wish you just twirl the
but
magic
it's like
wand.
There's so many steps missing. Well, first of all, like the world of surface design is so much more than that, and it's not necessarily like I have people who come to me with like how they do fine art, and they're like trying to learn to put stuff into repeat, and I'm like, but you already have this beautiful fine art. If you want it to be in repeat, is it because you want to license it? Because you could just license it as wall art instead of as fabric.
Yes.
That would probably be an easier thing for you, because you have this beautiful artwork. Like, okay. But anyways, that's a whole side story. But really, the whole thing about having like I'm going to license my art and then it's going to be a business. It's like, well, okay, but what I'm always trying to teach people, and I think you guys obviously understand as well, is like the nature of a creative business is it is not linear, as Katie was saying before, as Ilana, you have to try things. And the only way to move forward is to try things out and see what works. And what works for me does not necessarily work for you. And like, there are some like steps that you can take that are going to, help you figure out the process, but you're going to have slightly different results than other, you're going to have different results. So being comfortable with trying things and getting your work in front of people is where, is like the most important thing of owning a business, whether it's a big brand that you've stepped into or a tiny little, seed that you've just started learning to put into repeat or whatever it is. No matter the scale of your business, as a creative, we just have to learn to like put it out there and try things.
Yeah. I love that you're able to identify to someone and not, I think this goes down to like who you are as a person, but if someone comes to you and says, I want to make repeating patterns, I love that you look deeper and say, well, why do you want to do this when you already have artwork that is perfect for XYZ? Because I think a lot of times, I know it's happened to me several times, is I see someone else who I admire or I love their work or just something that is a shiny penny. And I'm like, that sounds cool. That must be the thing that's missing from my business. And then you like forget the context, right? A lot of people come to us and they're like, I don't know what product my artwork would be good on. But if you kind of take a second and go backwards and say, these are the things I love and like this is my dream, instead of like, oh, I've heard about licensing, I heard you could make money, I should do that. Like if you come from like the root of your goals and like what you really want out of your creativity and your business, then you get a really different answer than, oh, I saw someone else do this collab, now I want to do it.
Right.
It
And
has
like
to
that,
come
it
from
just
an
doesn't,
authentic place.
yeah,
Yeah,
definitely.
I agree. And I mean, and also no matter who you're following, if you're an artist and you're following people, it's like everyone only has their own experience. So for me, I do tend to look at product-based things. I'm like, what product makes the most sense for your art? Because that is like my whole world. But like sometimes it's really, it's book illustration. Sometimes it's editorial illustration. Sometimes sometimes it's not exactly like products, like put it on a notebook. It's something more, it's just a different route. So,
Yeah. Books is a funny one. I see a lot of people, they're like, I really want to write a book. And I'm like, oh, do you love to write? And they're like, no, I just like really want to illustrate one. And I'm like, well, you could be an illustrator for books
yeah,
and you don't have to write it. And
yeah,
it would just be so cool to see my name on it. Well, you could see your name on the cover by illustrating it too. Like,
yeah.
and writing a book is great. I think that's such a great thing to aspire to. But also do you actually want to write, or do you just want to
Totally.
do the cover? Because that's really cool too. I mean, I buy books based on the cover. So, either one is lovely. It's just making sure it does come from that place. Like Katie said, that authentic place that is what you want and not what someone else wanted for their business.
And I think as far as how to figure that out, we also talked with Lauren Hom about the 3-bite rule. Ilana, you were bringing that. I listened to this on my walk the other day. That's why it's so fresh in my mind.
I know. I did see that episode came out, which before you go into
Yeah.
it, let me just plug Typecast Podcast, which is a great podcast. This is their podcast. And of course, all the links will be in the description for this. But so yeah, I did see that was an episode and I wanted to check it out. So tell us about the 3-bite rule.
Yeah.
Well, so the 3-bite rule was just as you're discovering what things you actually want to pursue further in your business, or when you're trying to decide if you like something or don't like it, you can't necessarily figure it out by just like thinking it through and just like picturing it. Sometimes you have to actually have to dive into it. We were talking about all the abandoned crafts that we as artists get into, and how we one day might be like, oh yeah, I'm gonna knit, and we go and freaking clean out Hobby Lobby or Michael's, and then we sit down and try it one day and we're like, oh, I absolutely hate this. This is not for me. And then we just have like
So much yarn.
20 balls of yarn. We're like, cool. But yeah, the 3-bite rule basically says actually try something and get into it and take take 3 solid bites before you decide if it's something that you're going to pass on or if it's something that you'd like to try more of.
Yeah, that goes along with the whole like my whole ethos of like taking action is like you can't really, you can't pre-think it. You have to try it. I have this like little anecdote I tell because I have young kids. Now they're 7 and 9, so they're getting older, but one time my youngest, when he was like 4 years old, he turned the page on an activity book and there was a maze, and it was kind of a complicated maze for a 4-year-old, and I was about to like give him some advice of like, okay, so now we're gonna look through, like I was really about to give him advice. He put his pencil down and whipped into it, and like he hit of course he hit like 10 dead ends, but it was just like he did it like it was a cul-de-sac. Like he didn't pick up his pencil and be like, oh no, and what am I gonna do?
I gotta turn around.
He just was like, yeah, it was just, he just turned around, like that was part of the maze. Like the dead ends were part of the maze, and it was just the cul-de-sac, and he just kept going until he got to the end. And here I was trying to have him give my dumb adult voice to say, look it through first and figure it out. It's a freaking maze on a piece of paper. He went for it. He hit some dead ends. He curved around. He was out the door. It didn't matter. Like, and I mean, how perfect of a metaphor is that for our careers? Like,
I was gonna say,
while the rest of us are sitting here trying to think out what's going to happen if I post this post on Instagram, is this reel going to be the one? Because I did, like, my son would have posted 4 reels and whatever, deleted the one that was the lowest performing or something. I mean, he's obviously not on Instagram, but based on the way he does mazes, so it's just
you
like,
can imagine the type of Instagrammer. Wow.
think of the dead ends as cul-de-sacs, right? Like that's the thing. Just turn right around.
I love that. So there's this Zen Buddhist concept called Shoshin. I think I'm saying it right. And it's basically like a beginner's mind. And the thing is, when we pick up the knitting, we're going to be really bad at it. And when we like try the maze for the first time, we're probably going to be pretty bad at it. And I think it's like what Lauren was saying with those 3 bites, it's like you don't know if you're any good or if you even like it until you actually give it a good try. And I think the farther we get into our creative practice, the more we lose that beginner's mindset. Because I remember when I started hand lettering, I was like, I just want to get better. I want to get better. I want my taste to match my skill, like that, the gap. And then we sort of get to a point where we're comfortable and then we stop striving. We just kind of like doubt ourselves and get in this vicious cycle. And so if we can approach it with more of a beginner mindset, even if it's like a beginner mindset towards every project we tackle, like it's the first time I'm doing this exact project, or every time you try a new marketing method, or every time you release a new project, you're just not going to know on the first bite. It's going to be frustrating. You're going to mess up. So you got to give it a good try to actually make those decisions.
I love that.
And I think it's not just about testing to see if you're good at it. Like you mentioned, it's more about testing to see if you like it. I think a lot of us who have been working on our careers or our skills for a long time, we've gotten to this place where we forget what it was like to suck at something, and we like hate that feeling. And so it's much more important to pay attention to if you're getting a spark from something, if you're getting some joy from the actual process of the thing, and not reflecting too much on if you're good or if you're bad. I just gave a talk like a couple of days ago on becoming an imperfectionist. I'm a recovering perfectionist. And somebody asked me at the end, like, what happens when you try to, try something new and like you're actually look down and you're like really bad at it. I mean, that does suck. Like I know the feeling and I hate that. And like I try to, make everything, something that's worthy of showing and posting to the internet. And that's, the type of thing that I'm trying to overcome. But something that I answered with something that my therapist told me recently, which actually creating the talk, I was feeling a bunch of anxiety and like, I want to make this good, which was all sorts of layers of irony. And she was like, okay, today we're going to work on clearing out this feeling, because I know that it's like blocking you from what you need to do right now. But I want to work with you on sitting with uncomfortable feelings
Mm,
because this is like something that is part of life. And sometimes you're going to go through a whole week and be like, I just have to be anxious and I have to still exist and do things as a human and
yeah.
I can't shut down.
Mm,
And so that was my answer to her was like, sometimes when you are bad at something, you need to sit with the uncomfortable feeling. And I'm saying that as much for other people
yeah,
as for
for
myself.
everyone. Yeah, yeah, exactly. I love that. That's such a great takeaway. Um, well, so I mean, I have so many things that I want. I don't know. I'm like, what should I talk about next?
I know we could always talk for so
I
much
know
longer
we
than we
always
give
wait, seriously, it
ourselves.
could be like 18 years. Well, all right, let's talk about uh working together because I mean I have been you guys have been working together 5, 6, 7 years,
Sure.
something like that. We've decided that the timelines we're not so sure about, but that's okay. And as someone who has to make all the decisions in my business and, I have contractors and stuff, but I have to have all the ideas and I have to make all the decisions. I really get envious of the businesses I know where I see you got like you guys who, are working together and having this sort of like built-in collaboration, built-in balance checks and balances. So what are some things that you guys have learned about working with a partner in a creative business? Because I've also seen obviously situations where, maybe it isn't going as well or is a struggle. I'm sure you guys have gone through bad times as well, or maybe not bad times, but had struggles and whatever. But do you have any
Sure.
tips for people who may be considering having some sort of collaboration, partnership type business?
Well, what
Yeah.
we did was test the waters first. Like we
Mm,
did one project together and one collaboration. We actually didn't even have in mind that we would potentially be business owners
mhm,
together later. But it was a really good way for us to try out how we worked collaboratively without everything being,
on the
without
line.
being fully all in on the table. Because I've had so many relationships and collaborations where I don't click with the other person or people like I have with Ilana. And what really has worked about the two of us is that we have opposing strengths in a lot of places. So we
Mhm.
fill in each other's kind of gaps, and it becomes this much more healthy, like overall work situation because Alana is really, really good at moving fast, handling like small things, improvising, getting something on the page. We call Alana the messy rough draft in like the most loving way possible because when I was younger and we would have like a writing assignment and they give us time to write in class, I would sit there and stare at a blank page and not put anything down because I was trying to control it and make it perfect before it even came out of me.
Mm,
Whereas like Alana is just like, let me put it out.
mhm.
We have
And
to
so
like
she
we're just
really
meeting in
helps
the
me with
middle.
that. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. And then I think I come along and I do more of like the polish and the finessing of things and the checking of things. So it just is such a good balance. So I think look for somebody that has the same values as you but different strengths.
Mm,
Yeah. We also we are both as financially and emotionally invested in our business as the other person. It's a complete 50-50 partnership, which I cannot imagine being okay doing it a different way.
No.
Because it
It's
means
like
that
I'm
we're
70% more responsible than you are because
yeah.
like that gets so complicated.
But
mm,
also, a couple things. I think this worked out in our favor is that we were not friends first. Like our first interaction was working together. And
mm,
so we built our friendship over time based on the things that we found out about each other while working together. And so I think that was really nice because we didn't have a friendship to like lay the groundwork. We were able to like build something completely new together.
mm,
And so that was really interesting. But we always say when you want to like look for a collaboration, there are so many ways to collaborate that don't mean like buying into a business together.
Yeah.
You don't have to like go that deep. Like you could do a art challenge together. You could do a podcast episode. You could do like a free mastermind where you and 3 friends, like finding those people who will lift you up and are in the same sort of like sea as you or boat or whatever. Like
Mhm.
it makes such a difference in having
Yes.
someone that you can turn to who is in a similar position than you. And there are so many places you can find that in the licensing world too, and or in whatever art world you're in. But yeah, I think I kind of pinch ourselves and we're like, how did we find each other? Because we would have never known that we would be like the yin to the other's yang. And we've both been okay with giving up parts of our process to the other person.
Yeah.
Like Katie said, she's okay with me starting as the messy first draft, and I'm okay with it looking different at the end than how it looked in my head. It takes time to get there,
Yeah.
but and we have to constantly check in and be like, is this too different? Is this good? Is this what you were thinking? Or, oh, that's not exactly what I meant. And so that open line of communication is really important. We talk a lot, but we also have pretty clear boundaries and we don't live near each other. So I think those things have all obviously been challenges in moments too, but also been really helpful to us because, we just have a very deep shared goal, which is, I think,
Love
the
that.
most important.
I love that. And you make such a great point about, well, I love the point of like starting with something smaller. I mean, definitely before diving into a whole business, but like starting with creating something as you guys did originally. But then I mean, your points, Ilana, about community in various forms is not necessarily, doesn't have to be a collaboration as much as, it could be an accountability partner or just,
Mhm.
yeah, a support, any sort of like support group, because yeah, community is just such an important part of being a solo creative business owner, and having that support system is like, I'm so grateful for the people that I've met along the way who I can bounce ideas off of or ask questions to. And Ilana is certainly one of them, and Katie is now going to be one of them after this call, clearly, so just watch out for that. But
Can't
um
wait.
yeah, so I love that. So with Goodtype, you guys also, with all your experimenting and trying different things and building up, you also launched a new type-focused event called the Conference. Is that how you pronounce it? The Conference?
Yeah.
Yes.
And in 2024, the conference it's coming up in November. And I want to know some behind the scenes about this, because this is another kind of like huge undertaking that you guys just like, oh, well, we'll just put together this huge conference that has corporate sponsors and speakers and workshops and panels. I think this debuted maybe 2 years. Tell me a little bit about the history.
Yeah.
What are some tips, or yeah, just tell me a little bit about it, and what, if someone was thinking about putting a live event together, what kind of
Oh,
things
yeah.
we should look
I've
out
got
for.
it. Well, first of all, you didn't even mention that you're speaking at it this
I am
year.
speaking at the well, I'm on the panel for art
You're on a panel.
licensing, so I'm excited about that. Yes,
Yes.
I'm
Gonna be
I'm very
great.
much looking forward to it, and all the details about this will be in the description as well. So we'll keep you updated on that.
Awesome.
But tell me a little bit more.
Yeah. I think really Katie had said to me when we first, we talked about our goals for Goodtype, and Katie basically looked at me and was like, the most obvious and the most natural, and I don't know, like the perfect thing for us to do, since Goodtype is a community first, is to bring our people together. Like that
Mm,
just seemed like the no-brainer. And so
okay.
we really like thought about what that would look like. And during COVID, we realized that it had to be online and hopefully one day in person. But really what we want to do with this event is fill everyone's cup with both inspiration, but also like very actionable things that they can do and bring into their business, whether it's skill building or information about licensing or answering questions. So much. We just want to jam pack it, but we also wanted to create as close as possible to a real in-person experience. And so we've done that through like the live sessions, through networking events that we do inside the platform, and really just trying to like bring the good vibes of being in person to this little corner of the internet for a couple days. And the other thing is we see a lot of the same people talking. And that's great. We like love to hear it. We love going to these events, but we really want to shine a light on people who we think should have a place to speak, you know, give them a
Mm,
platform to speak on. And so we really want the lineup to be a great mix of maybe people you've heard of and you look up to, and then people you've never heard of before who will literally blow your minds.
mm.
And so we really try and curate this great mix of people and then just fill the room, the virtual room, with inspiration and connection.
Yeah.
Yeah, and part of your question, I think, too, was like how to go about thinking about putting something like this together if you're
Mm,
interested.
Yeah.
So it is a big undertaking. First and foremost, I'm going to be honest with you about
mm,
that. But if it's something you're passionate about, it's absolutely doable, even if you know literally nothing about it at this very moment. So basically, we kind of convened and found the most important things to us first and kind of oriented building our conference around that. Obviously, Ilana mentioned like the people who are speaking and the diversity and introducing people to new people. That was hugely important. So we really started with that by curating a lineup that we were really excited about and reaching out to those people. And the logistics are pretty like straightforward for that. I mean, I think a lot of these things you can think through just logically. How would I do that and come up with answers that work? It's a lot of organization and making sure you have things in one place. And so if you're good at organizing, that's awesome. If you need some help on that, you will want to enlist somebody else to help you with
yeah.
that. And then we also wanted the platform to be awesome because all of the people who come to the conference are artists and designers, and I think they really value a space that like looks and feels cool. And also part of that was us wanting to have that in person almost feeling. So we had like a lot of different things that you could do, and then encouraging people to like meet each other and engage with each other. So we would do things like build in some gamification into the system so that like people who were more active in the chat got rewarded, things like that. And this year we have a networking, kind of like a speed networking thing that's super
Mm.
cool. It's like speed dating basically, but
Yeah,
for
tell me a little
friends.
bit about that. I think I saw something about that. Tell me a little bit about what that will be like.
Yeah, so basically you just say some of the things that you like, some of the areas of art that you're interested in your profile, and then it will you just during speed what networking time you say, okay, match me with somebody, and the computer will just match you with somebody who has similar interests
Mm.
if you've put interest in your profile. And you get like 2 to 3 minutes to just like chat and interact, and we'll give you some guidelines around maybe some icebreakery topics, and then you can decide if you want to exchange information or not. You can There's like a button where you can just connect
Awesome.
if you hit it off, and then you just go on to the next person and you just
So
meet a bunch of people,
cool.
make a bunch of new connections. It sounds or it was a great hit at the Conference Light. We did like a little trial version of the Conference earlier in the year just to give people a taste and to experience it, even if they're not able to afford like the full 3 day pass. And yeah, some people were like, that was my favorite part. So we're really
Oh, okay.
excited to do it for the main conference too.
That's awesome. And that's a perfect way to potentially make some of those, connections for that community that we're
Collabs.
talking about. So I
Yeah.
love that.
Yeah.
I love that. So I'll have information in the description for this video about the conference if that sounds like something you guys, anyone who's watching is interested in. That's coming up in November. I think, what is it? November 13th,
13th through
13th
15th.
through 15th. Yeah.
15th. All right,
It's a
cool.
good time.
That is
Yeah.
We'd love
And
to
we
see y'all
also have
there.
we have a Slack channel too that anyone is welcome to join. And it has a share your work section where you can upload any of your work and just ask for feedback. And the community's been really great about providing really constructive feedback. We always want, because we went to design school, we're always trying to change that conversation about critiques and
Mm.
making it feel like really safe to share your work. And so
Yeah,
if you're
yeah.
looking for a place for that, you can definitely hop in there.
For lettering artists, and hand
Yeah,
lettering.
anyone can join. It's a free channel, so anyone can join. You could share your pattern work in there too.
Awesome. Well, we'll put a link
Yeah,
to that as well then.
cool.
Well, that is, I mean, I have like other things that I want to talk about, but we can't get to it all.
Yeah.
So
No,
I
this
guess
is a 10-part series.
yeah. I guess that is it for today, but definitely check out the links in the description and check out Goodtype because they have so much going on besides Katie and Ilana's. Like obviously they have an awesome podcast, but we've already mentioned like some of the resources that they provide on their site and the community and everything like that. So there's a lot happening over at Goodtype. And they're great for creative businesses. Thanks so much for joining me, guys.
Thanks for
Thanks
having
for
us.
hosting.
Ready to level up your surface pattern design game? Dive into the ultimate resource hub for aspiring designers, the Surface Pattern Boss Toolkit. Unlock a treasure trove of freebies, including sales sheet templates, exclusive industry expert videos, and mini courses to grow your creative business. Don't miss out. Click the link in the description below to access your toolkit now and become a pattern design pro.